Good morning and welcome back to World Talks. I'm Salia Strzemska and we'll continue to discuss the devastating flooding here in Central Europe. The death toll from torrential rain and flooding in Europe has risen to at least 16. Several people are still missing. Authorities in the Czech Republic, Poland and Austria asked citizens to evacuate to higher ground, fearing that the worst may be yet to come. To discuss the current situation from a scientific point of view, I am joined here this morning by Michel Nons, Associate Professor, Hydrology and Hydrodynamics Department, Institute of Geophysics, Polish Academy of Sciences. Good morning, sir.
Good morning.
So let me start by asking you about the reasons for the current flooding. What is it? Is it excessive rain? Are there any other causes to what's happening?
Well, the key driver are excessive rains, which are caused by the meeting of cold currents coming from the Arctic and very warm temperature coming from the Mediterranean Sea. These two currents were stuck above Central and Eastern Europe, so they caused this excessive rain, which is now in this cold Boris storm.
Right. So how does the current situation compare to the events that took place in the past, historically?
Well, as we saw also in other reports, it compares to it's very similar to what happened in 1997, which was called Millennium Flood. But the key problem here is that we are just 30 years after this Millennium Flood. So it's pretty evident that we are facing another enormous amount of rain falling down in a short period of time. And this might cause similar problems even if we are more prepared right now. But we should also keep in mind that these events are more likely to happen again in the future in a short period of time, mostly because of climate change.
Right. So what are the predicted rainfall amounts moving forward and how they will impact the current situation?
Well, that's a bit difficult to know because it's a very dynamic situation. So far, over Poland, it fall down mostly like half of the annual amount of rain. So most likely, the storm body is moving towards south. So Poland should be kind of okay-ish from now on. But in terms of exact amount of water that we should expect is a bit difficult to estimate it.
So how accurate were the early warning systems and hydrological models in predicting to what's happening right now?
Well, on the one side, there's a lack of data to exactly calibrate and validate this numerical modeling to activate early warning system. And on the other side, we have to keep in mind that we are facing new events, which are very difficult to predict based on past data, because climate change is altering all the rainfall patterns. So calibrating existing hydrological data, hydrological models is very hard because of the lack of historical data.
Right. So how has, in your view, the flood control system performed in the current situation?
Well, it's evident that there are some lacks, but that's because it was unexpected, and also because a lot of flood control structures are very local, while we have to consider that these events impact entire basins. So all the future flood strategies should address the reduction at the catchment scale, and not only locally, because as in the cases of the reservoir, a specific problem can cause a lot of issues downstream.
Right. So what are the issues with the flood prevention system? What caused them and how they're being addressed? And I mean, dams and other forms of infrastructure which did not perform according to plan.
Yeah. On the one side, those structures are built based on past data as the hydrological models, so they can underperform in the case of extreme events, more frequent extreme events, which were unpredictable, and are also aging, all those structures. Now we can see that there are intervention to repair some failing in dikes or in dams. And then there is a lack of flood prevention measures because, again, this water was not expected and it's really extreme. So even if there are a lot of reservoirs, they are not able to to keep inside of them all the water that's falling out now.
So how will what is happening right now inform future preparedness? Are you discussing such things in scientific community already?
Yeah, there are discussion because we have to move from like emergency-driven response to those events to more preparedness, to integrate engineering structure and engineering measures with nature-based solution to reduce floods at the catchment scale. So to prevent flooding not only some specific communities, some cities, but also the environment. And in the scientific community, there's an ongoing discussion. Now we have to translate this ongoing discussion from science to practice to prepare our future.
So is, for instance, climate change being considered as one of the factors?
Yeah, I mean, it's basically the main driver of this excessive rain and this increasing frequency and magnitude of events, because we are moving from very dry periods to extreme flooding events, and all those things are mainly driven by climate change. So in all the future plans, we are considering climate change, and it should be considered as well.
Right, so let's move on to some of the effects of what has happened, to some of the damage. So what kind of risks are the populations right now facing? I mean, perhaps in terms of disease that could spread through what has just happened, or other risk factors?
Yeah, as we saw, the water is not only affecting houses and displacing people, but it's also negatively influencing the water quality. So there are the opportunity to spread diseases is higher because the water is not clean anymore, and also because these floods are are carrying all the material goods, but also cars, plastics. So all those matters that are going through the current, through the rivers and streets, are negatively influencing the water quality, which is potentially increasing disease probability.
So, sir, what areas are currently under the highest flood risk, and what can be done to perhaps try and help them prepare better to what's going to happen?
I mean, for now, as we saw, the mountain parts is more or less stabilized, apart from reservoirs which are under control. But also the cities are now facing problems, Wrocław and all the cities downstream on the other river. One way is to avoid this overlapping of flooding waves coming from different rivers. Basically, trying to store water in one or the other river to reduce at least one of the flood wave, or to delay it, to have not overlapping. So in this manner, it's possible to decrease a bit the level and potentially to avoid the overbanks.
Right. I also wanted to ask about sort of some regional strategies, of course, but then also the very local ones, right? Because some places experience the flash floods. So to what extent can the overarching strategy help, and to what extent does it depend on these local communities and what they have done to prepare?
Well, local communities can, the river is trying to get back to the regional space. So one strategy could be at the long term increasing the room for the water into the river, but this, of course, it impacts a lot the population. So in the short term, the one way is to protect houses with sandbags, or by increasing the height of the embankments. But again, we should think not only in the very short term, now where the disaster is happening, but also in the long term to increase our preparedness with more wise strategies.
Right, but now in hindsight, could there be something else done to prevent what has happened. Can you point to some mistakes that took place?
Well, not really in the short. Right now when the disaster is happening, of course it should be then consider what was the preparedness at the beginning and what was all the chain of communication and emergency planning, also to evacuate people from the flooded houses. But I think this should be done after the event and discussing with all the actors that were involved.
Right, but just sort of going back to your role, right, to the scientific role, why did the scientific community, I perhaps can say, failed to predict what ensued?
Again, here it goes back to the lack of data that we have because there are not that many gauging stations in the upper mountains. And those events were not present in the past apart from the 97 event, but it was with a return period. So it was a flood that happened once in a century, once in a couple of centuries. Now we have a 30-year span between these floods, so it was unpredictable. And so the hydrological models were not able to predict all this water in this short amount of time.
Right, so just to sort of sum up our discussion, some of the key takeaways from what has happened that can be applied to the future, what would that be?
First of all, learn from this event to avoid the repetition of the impacts. So by implementing flood management strategies and preparedness strategies at the catchment scale, not only locally, so to not only protect some people, but to protect the entire country and potentially the entire Europe. Integrating natural-based solution with engineering solution, also considering the opportunity to give more space to the water, to give more space to the river, with wise strategic planning for the future. And then measure connection between science and practitioners and water authorities to communicate more faster and more on a science-based evidence.
Absolutely. Michel Nones, thank you, sir, for being with us. Much appreciated.
Thank you very much.
And thank you for watching World Talks. Please stay tuned for more here on TVP World. New service coming up at the